Hello and welcome to my studio. Today I'm going to be talking about watercolor techniques. The first technique I'm talking about today is wet on wet. You can see here I've laid down some water, not too much, and I'm just kind of adding color to that water. Kind of spreads out as I'm painting it, and I'm adding little by little, more and more. It just kind of comes out. It's not spreading too much because I'm using a somewhat small brush and not too much pigment. I do switch to a larger brush and pick a different color so you can kind of see how they spread together. So I'm going in with this green. I like to have the perfect balance between the wet and pigment, how much water I'm adding in. So here I am. It does spread a little bit easier, but you can see that the edges are really soft. And so these will kind of blend together over time. You can see the blue kind of creeping towards the green. And when you put the two colors next to each other like this, hi Cicero. When you put the two colors next to it like this, they kind of blend into each other. And I'm actually going to pause after I've put down more of this blue. I'm going to pause and show you another wet on wet, but this time I'm going to add a lot of water. So here I've added kind of a big pool of water, too much water in my opinion, and you can see how the paint is reacting differently. It's sitting more on the surface of the paper and just kind of blooping out. I don't know what other word to describe for this. I hate the way that this is reacting, but I just wanted to show you what it would be like. The other problem with adding this much water to the paper is that when it dries, they will very, very much blend together. And sometimes it will get really muddy, but it can also have some really cool effects as it dries. Very unexpected. So when you add a lot of the water, you're going to have more unexpected results. The other problem with adding a lot of water like this is it will tend to wrinkle the paper a lot more at the end, just because of the way the water's absorbing. Now I'm going in with like another color just to show you that as I add color, that color is going to replace whatever you had down there as long as you are working wet, like wet paint on wet paint. So you can see how it spreads. The next technique I want to talk about is doing gradients. This is another wet technique. Basically, I'm putting down really pigmented paint. I'm dipping my paint in the water, kind of wiping some off, and then adding more pigment. So each time I'm taking away some pigment, and I have it now so it's kind of fading out into a gradient, and it will actually, as it dries, it will even smooth out even further. You can do this with a big brush, and then I'm also going to show you how I do it with a small brush and a different color. I really love the way that the big brushes create the gradients, but it's still possible to do with smaller brushes. The next technique I am going to show you is basically a wet on dry. I am taking, this is a Dagger brush. I obviously did not have enough water. It's very dry. Very good dry brush technique, but I added more water as I went along. I like the Dagger brush because you can add different shapes. It adds some interest at times. So here I am adding just basically a basic layer down. And while I let this dry, I'm going to show you a dry brush technique. A lot of the times at the end of a painting, I like to go in with a smaller brush and add some detail. I'm trying very hard not to add a lot of water to this, so there will be a little more pigment in this. You can see as I'm kind of rubbing it, it's harder to get the pigment to lay down because it doesn't have as much water in it to absorb into the paper. I'm just making some marks here so you can kind of see. This is very much a dry brush technique. And you can even, once things are dry, you can start layering things really well. Now I'm going in with another color, and I'm going to show you, now that this is dry, kind of how I add lines to it. I didn't really have a plan for this, so I was just kind of, you know, playing around, doing some fun things. And you can see that it sits really well on top of the other layer. I'm also not working with this with a lot of water. I'm using a drier brush with a lot more pigment, and it lays down faster. The next thing I wanted to show you was basically just some layering. So I went in with the same color, but you can actually do this with multiple colors where you can mix colors together. I just went in with the same color, and you can see that the lines are still there underneath because it's dry, but then I've laid another color on it and it makes the lines darker, but it has this slash through it. So that works the same way. Again, I'm doing this with the little thing, flowery thing I drew on the bottom, and I'm going in and adding some definition to the edges to kind of give it more of a realistic 3D effect. Something else that I'm doing here as well is I'm going in with basically no pigment on my brush and adding water to give it more of that gradient and the softer edge that you might see if something was really 3D. My last little trick is if you're fast enough, you can sometimes blot up mistakes before they stick. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe so we can make more art together.